Welcome, and let yourself arrive here slowly, with nowhere else to be and nothing left to do tonight. Find the softest place you can, and let yourself sink into it. Let the weight of the day settle out of your shoulders, out of your arms, out of your hands. Dim the lights, or let them go out altogether. Pull the covers up if you like the gentle weight of them, and let your head rest fully, completely, into the pillow. There is nothing you need to do now but listen, and even the listening can be soft. You do not have to follow every word. You do not have to remember anything. You can let the story drift over you the way warm water drifts over smooth stones in a slow and shaded river. And if your thoughts wander, that is good. That is welcome. Let them wander all the way down into sleep. This is a long and old story, told gently, made to last all through the night, so you may let it play on as long as you wish. If you fall asleep in the first few minutes, that is perfectly right. If you stay awake to the end, that is right too. There is no wrong way to rest here. And if it would help you find this quiet place again tomorrow night, you are warmly invited to subscribe so the stories can keep finding their way to you. But for now, let even that small thought go. Let your breath slow now, in through the nose, soft and unhurried, and out again, longer and softer still, like a tide easing back from the shore. We are going to travel, you and I, far back, farther than memory, to the long green land along a great and patient river, where the oldest of all stories were first whispered beneath the stars. This is the story of Osiris, the gentle king, and of all that came before him and all that came after. It is a story of beginnings, and of love that does not end, and of a quiet kingdom beyond the edge of sleep. Breathe, and let us begin. In the beginning, before there were fields, before there were cities, before there was anything at all to count or name, there was only water. Not a sea with shores, not a river with banks, but a deep and shoreless darkness of still water that had always been, stretching out in every direction, without top or bottom, without near or far. The old people of that land called these waters none, and they imagined them as endless and calm, dark and warm, a vast, quiet ocean of all that had not yet come to be. Picture it now, if you like, the way you might picture the dark just behind your closed eyes. There was no light in those waters, and no time, for time had not yet been made. There was only the patient, dreaming dark, holding within itself, the way a seed holds a whole tree, everything that would one day awaken. And then, so the old tellers say, out of that dreaming dark, something stirred. Slowly, the way warmth gathers in a sleeping body, a single thought formed in the deep, and that thought grew gently into one who could think it. He rose, the first of all, and the old people gave him many names, but we may simply call him the first God, the one who made himself out of the stillness. He floated alone for a long while in the endless waters, and he was patient, for there was no hurry in the world that had no time. And when at last he wished for somewhere to stand, a small hill rose up beneath him out of the deep, the first dry place, the first solid thing, a low mound of soft earth lifting quietly above the water, like the first sandbar that appears when a flood begins to ease. On that little hill, alone in all the world, the first God stood, and he was both lonely and full, for everything that would ever be was still folded up inside him, waiting. And from him, in their turn, came the first powers of the world. From his own breath, the old people said, came the wind that moves softly over still water, and the soft, thin mist that rises in the cool of evening. These were his first children, the air and the moisture, the breath and the dew, and with them the world had its first gentle motion, the first slow stirring of something that could move and change. Imagine the faintest breeze passing over a sleeping pond, just enough to set the surface trembling, and then all going still again. That is how quietly the world began to live. From the air and the moisture, in time, came two more, greater and wider than their parents. There came the earth, broad and dark and warm, the ground that holds and steadies everything that lives upon it. And there came the sky, vast and arching and deep, scattered all over with the soft light of stars. The old people pictured these two as a brother and a sister who loved one another so closely that at first they could not bear to be apart, the earth below and the sky above, pressed gently together with no space between them. And so the air, their father, lifted the sky up high and held her there, arching far over the earth like a great calm canopy stretched above a sleeping camp, so that there might be room beneath her for all the world to grow. To this day, the old teller said, you may see the earth lying long and low and restful below, and the sky bending tenderly over him from horizon to horizon, never quite able to come close, but never turning away. And in the wide and gentle space that had opened between the earth and the sky, the seasons could begin, and the days could begin, and life could begin. Now there was a below and an above. Now there was a place to stand and a place to look up into. Now there was room enough for stories. And it is here, in this newly opened world, beneath the arching sky and upon the broad and patient earth, that our story truly begins to gather itself slowly, the way clouds gather softly at the edge of a warm afternoon. For the sky, that vast and starry mother, carried within her, in time, children of her own. And the old people told that these children were born across a handful of special days, days that did not belong to the ordinary year, soft extra days folded quietly into the turning of the seasons like a gift tucked gently into a fold of cloth. Upon these days, one after another, the great children of earth and sky came into the world. And the first of them, the eldest and the gentlest, born when the world was still young and tender, was the one whose story we have come all this way to tell. His name was Osiris. Let your breath slow a little more now. There is no need to hold anything. Let the names pass over you like soft lamplight moving along a wall. You do not have to keep them. The story will carry them for you. Osiris was born into a world that was still finding its shape, a world of new rivers and new shores, of new grasses and new mornings. And from his very first hour, the old tellers say, there was a calm and a kindness about him, a steadiness, as though some of the deep patience of those first dark waters had passed quietly into his heart. And he was not born alone into that bright young world. With him, across those soft folded days, came his brothers and his sisters, the great family whose loves and sorrows would shape everything that followed. There was his sister, Isis, wise beyond all telling, whose love would become the very thread that held the story together. There was his brother, a restless and burning one, whom we will come to know in time, born under a redder sky. And there was another sister, gentle and quiet, who would walk softly through the edges of the tale. They were a family of the world's first morning, and like the dawn, they carried both light and the long shadows that light always makes. But let us not hurry toward shadows, not yet. For now there is only the soft beginning, the warm earth, the arching star-filled sky, the great patient river beginning to find its way through the long green land, and a gentle child born to be a king. Breathe in slowly, breathe out slowly, and let us follow him now, down the quiet years, as he grows toward the work that was always waiting for him. When Osiris had grown, the old tellers say, the land was given into his keeping, and he became its first true king. Picture a young land in those early days, before there were roads, before there were fields laid out in their neat dark rows, before the people knew how to gather what they needed and live softly together. The people of that time wandered, and they were uncertain, and they did not yet know the gentle arts that make a life feel settled and safe. They ate what they found, and they did not always find enough, and their days were restless, and their nights uneasy. And Osiris looked upon them with that calm and patient kindness that had been in him since his first hour, and he wished, more than anything, to give them rest. So he went out among them, not as a distant ruler high above their heads, but as one who walks beside, as a teacher walks beside a child learning to wade into shallow water. He showed them how the great river rose each year and spread its dark and gentle flood across the land, and how, when the waters drew back, they left behind a soft black soil, rich and damp and ready, the most patient gift the river had to give. He showed them how to press the seed into that waiting earth, how to wait through the slow green growing, how to gather in the golden grain when at last it stood tall and heavy and ripe beneath the sun. He taught them the slow and steady rhythm of planting and harvest, the rhythm that turns wandering into staying, that turns hunger into plenty, that lets a people lie down at night, knowing there will be bread in the morning. And the people learned, and they grew calm, the way a child grows calm when it is fed and safe and rocked. Where they had wandered, now they stayed. Where they had been hungry, now they had enough, and more than enough, enough to share. Osiris taught them how to tend the vine and how to gather its fruit, how to draw out the sweetness of the things that grow, and how to set aside a portion in times of plenty against the times of want. He taught them the gentle skills of the hands and the slow wisdom of the seasons. And under his quiet care, the long green land became a place of gardens and orchards, of grain fields swaying softly in the river wind, of evenings when the cooking fires sent up their thin blue smoke, and the people sat together, unhurried, no longer afraid. He gave them more than bread, though bread was the heart of it. He gave them the soft order of laws, not harsh laws meant to frighten, but gentle agreements that let people live close together without fear, the way the banks of the river gently guide its waters without ever forcing them. He showed them how to honor one another, how to settle their quarrels with quiet words instead of raised hands, how to keep their promises, how to care for the old and the young. He taught them songs, the old tellers say, and the sweetness of music, the soft sounds of strings and reeds drifting over the fields at dusk. And he taught them to lift their hearts in gratitude toward the great powers of the world, toward the earth that holds, the sky that arches over, the river that returns each year with its patient gift. And his sister Isis stood always at his side, wise and steady and deep. And what he gave to the men of the land, she gave in equal measure to the women. She showed them the gentle crafts of the household, the spinning of thread and the weaving of cloth, the grinding of grain into soft flour, the slow shaping of a home into a place of warmth and safety. She knew the secret powers of the plants that grow, which leaves could ease a fever, which roots could soothe a pain, which quiet remedies could bring sleep to a restless child, or comfort to an aching limb. Her love was practical, and her wisdom was kind, and between the two of them, Osiris and Isis, brother and sister, king and queen, the land was made gentle, and the people were made glad. Let your breath slow a little more as you imagine it. A land at peace, a people fed and unafraid, long golden afternoons over the waving grain, and cool blue evenings beside the slow water, and everywhere a quiet contentment settling over the world like dew settling over a field at the close of day. This was the gift of Osiris, and the people loved him for it, with a love that was deep and simple and true. They did not love him because they feared him. They loved him because he had given them rest. And there is no love stronger than that, the love a tired heart feels for the one who finally lets it rest. So great was the goodness of that land, the old tellers say, that Osiris, in time, wished to share it beyond the long green valley of the river. For he was not a king who wished only to keep his own people safe while the rest of the world wandered hungry. He thought of all the wandering peoples beyond the hills and the deserts, all the others who had not yet learned the gentle arts of grain and garden, of law and song. And so he set out on a long and peaceful journey, away from his home, away from his throne, to carry the soft gifts of plenty and peace to lands he had never seen. He went not with armies, for he carried no spear and wished no harm. He went with seeds and with songs and with patient teaching, and wherever he came, the people gathered around him and listened and learned and were glad. Imagine him moving slowly through far countries, a gentle figure followed not by soldiers but by music, leaving behind him, in country after country, the same calm he had given his own land, the same fields of grain swaying in the wind, the same evenings of quiet and plenty. He won the world not by conquering it, but by feeding it, not by fear, but by kindness, and the world opened to him the way a flower opens slowly to the warmth of morning. And while Osiris wandered far, teaching and giving, his sister Isis kept watch over the long green land at home, and she ruled it wisely in his absence with the same gentle hand, so that all stayed calm and all stayed well. The grain grew, the river rose and fell in its patient way. The people slept untroubled, and the kingdom waited peacefully for its king to return. For a long and golden while, the old tellers say, there was no sorrow anywhere in that story. There was only the slow turning of good and gentle years. But every story that has a morning must in time have its noon and its evening. And even in that golden land a shadow was beginning, very softly, to lengthen. For not every heart in that great family was at peace. While Osiris gave and Isis kept watch, and the people grew glad, there was one who watched all this gladness with a different feeling stirring quietly within him. And to understand the sorrow that is coming, slowly, the way a single cloud first appears at the far edge of a clear sky, we must turn now and look gently toward the brother of Osiris, the one born under the redder sky, the one whose name was Set. But do not let the turning trouble you. Let your breath stay slow. Whatever comes in this old story comes softened, comes gentle, comes at the pace of a tale told only to ease you toward sleep. There will be no sharp edges here, no sudden frights, nothing that startles. The shadow that is coming moves slowly, and even the sorrow in this tale is told tenderly, the way a kind voice tells a hard thing to a child who is already half asleep. So rest and breathe, and let us turn gently toward the brother in the story, and toward the long sorrow and the long love that are about to begin. Set was a brother of Osiris, born of the same earth and the same starry sky, born across those same soft folded days at the beginning of the world. But where Osiris was gentle and green and patient, Set was restless, the old tellers say, like the dry wind that comes off the red desert at the edge of the fertile land, the hot wind that stirs the sand and makes the air shimmer. He was not without his own strength, and in his own place he had his own work to do. For the world needs the desert as well as the river, the dry, hard places as well as the soft, green ones. But there was in him a restlessness that could not be soothed, a hunger that the gentle order of his brother's world did not satisfy. For Set looked upon all that Osiris had made, the golden fields and the glad people, and the love that rose toward his brother like smoke rising from the evening fires, and a slow, quiet bitterness began to gather in him, the way heat gathers over sand through a long and shadeless afternoon. Why should his brother be loved so, and not him? Why should the soft green land and its grateful people belong to Osiris, while he, Set, ruled only over the dry and lonely places where little grew and few sang his name? The thought was small at first, no larger than a single grain of sand carried on the wind. But thoughts like that do not stay small, the old tellers warn, if they are fed in the dark of a restless heart. Slowly, over the long golden years, the small bitterness grew and hardened and became a wish, and the wish became a plan. We will not dwell too long or too closely on the darkness in Set's heart, for this is a story for sleeping, and there is no need to look hard at any of it. Let it stay soft and far off, the way you might notice, from a warm bed, that a wind has begun to rise somewhere outside, without ever needing to go and stand in it. It is enough to know that while Osiris wandered the world giving gifts, and while he came home at last to his glad and waiting kingdom, his brother Set was quietly turning over, a cold thought again and again, the way the desert wind turns the same sand over and over without rest. Now Osiris had returned from his long and gentle journey, and there was great gladness in the land, for the good king had come home. And to welcome him, and to honor all that he had done, a great feast was prepared, a calm and beautiful gathering of the whole great family, and many of the people besides. Imagine the warmth of it, the long tables, the soft lamplight, the music drifting low, the smell of bread and fruit and sweet wine, the easy laughter of people who feel safe and loved. It was the kind of evening that seems to hold no harm in it at all, the kind of warm and golden night when no one is watching for a shadow. And Set came to the feast smiling, the old tellers say, with his bitterness hidden deep beneath a pleasant face, and he came bearing a gift, or what seemed to be a gift, for he had caused to be made a chest, a long and beautiful chest of fine dark wood, polished until it gleamed in the lamplight, inlaid with gold and with bright stones and with delicate patterns, the most beautiful chest that anyone at that feast had ever seen. It was a thing of real craft and real beauty, and when Set's servants carried it in and set it down among the gathering, A soft murmur of wonder passed through all the room, for everyone wished to look at it, and everyone admired it. But Set had made that chest with a quiet and careful cunning, for he had measured it in secret to fit one person and one person only. He had learned, somehow, the exact length and breadth of his brother Osiris, the precise shape of him, and he had had the chest made to those measurements and no others, so that it would fit Osiris as gently and as closely as a shell fits the soft creature within it, and would fit no one else at all. And this was the heart of his quiet plan, hidden inside a gift, the way a hard stone can hide inside a soft and pleasant fruit. When the feast was at its warmest and its merriest, Set rose with his pleasant smile and made a playful offer to all the gathering. "This beautiful chest," he said, "this wonder of dark wood and gold, he would give as a gift to whoever among them could lie down inside it and fit it perfectly, as though it had been made for them alone. It seemed only a game, a light and merry game for a feast night, a bit of fun to pass the warm hours. And so, one after another, the guests came laughing to try. The old tellers picture it gently, a long line of merry guests, each one climbing in and lying down, and each one finding the chest too long or too short or too wide or too narrow, never quite right, and each one climbing out again laughing while the next one came forward to try. And all the while Set watched with his pleasant face and his hidden heart, and waited. For he knew that none of them would fit, none of them could fit, because the chest had been made for one man only. And at last, when all the others had tried and laughed and failed, the gentle eyes of the gathering turned toward Osiris, the good king, who had been sitting calm and content among his loved ones, suspecting no harm at all, for he had never in all his life learned to expect harm, having given only kindness to the world. And they called out to him, lightly, merrily, that he should try the chest too, just for the fun of it, just to finish the game. Let your breath stay slow now. There is nothing you need to do but listen, and you already know, perhaps, the shape of what is coming, the way you sometimes know the end of a dream while you are still inside it. But remember, this is told gently, and it will stay gentle. Osiris rose, smiling, and came to the beautiful chest, and he lay down within it, there in the warm lamplight, among the people who loved him. And of course it fit him perfectly, gently, closely, as though it had been waiting all along just for him, which indeed it had. He lay there a moment, calm and unworried, fitted softly into the dark wood, and perhaps he even smiled up at his brother. And in that moment, Set's hidden heart showed itself at last. Swiftly, before anyone could move to stop it, the lid of the beautiful chest was brought down and closed over Osiris, and it was fastened shut and sealed, so that the good king was held fast within in the dark, in the close, warm dark of the gift that had been made to trap him. The old tellers tell this moment quickly and quietly, and so will we, for there is no need to linger in it. The lamps still burned. The music had stopped, and the long and golden peace of the land had, in a single quiet breath, come to its end. Then the chest was taken up and carried swiftly away, out of the warm hall and into the night, down to the edge of the great river, and there it was set upon the dark water and given to the current. And the river, patient and uncaring, did what rivers do. It carried the chest away upon its slow, strong flow, away from the feast, away from the land, drifting on through the darkness toward the wide sea, at the river's mouth and beyond. The good King Osiris was gone from the land of the living, carried off upon the water into the dark, and behind him he left a kingdom that did not yet know its loss, and a sister whose long search was about to begin. When Isis learned that her beloved was gone, a great stillness came over her, the old tellers say, the kind of stillness that is deeper than weeping. For she loved Osiris with a love that went all the way down to the roots of the world, and to lose him was to lose the warm center of everything. But Isis was wise, and Isis was strong with a quiet strength, and she did not let her sorrow turn her to stone. Instead she rose, and she covered her shining hair, and she went out alone to search for him, however far, however long, across whatever distance the dark river had carried him. And so began the long wandering of Isis, the search that is the very heart of this old and gentle story. Picture her now, moving through the world, a lone figure cloaked against the night, going from place to place, asking, always asking, listening, always listening, for any word of a beautiful chest carried upon the water. She did not hurry, for grief cannot be hurried, but she did not stop, for love does not stop. She walked the long banks of the great river. She followed its slow water down toward the sea. She asked the people of the fields and the people of the marshes, the fishermen mending their nets in the cool of the morning, the children playing at the water's edge, the old women sitting in their doorways watching the river go by. Have you seen it? Have you seen a chest of dark wood and gold upon the water? And on she went, and on, and on. Let your own breath move slowly with her steps, in and out, soft and patient, as she walks the long miles. There is something soothing, even in sorrow, about a search carried out with such steady love, for it asks nothing of you but to follow, gently, one slow step after another, down the long, quiet roads of an old, old world. The seasons turned as she searched. The river rose and fell, and still Isis walked, never giving up the small thread of hope that she would find him, because to give it up was a thing her loving heart simply could not do. And at last, the old tellers say, her long search brought her to a far country at the edge of the sea, to a city she had never seen, where a strange and gentle wonder had taken place. For the chest, carried out of the river and across the water, had drifted at last to that distant shore, and there it had come to rest among the reeds at the foot of a young tree, a small, soft tamarisk growing near the water. And the tree, as if it knew what gentle and precious thing had come to rest against it, had begun to grow slowly around the chest, the way a tree will sometimes grow around a stone or a fence post left long enough in its embrace. Up and up the tree grew, slow and strong over many quiet seasons, until the beautiful chest was held entirely within its trunk, hidden deep in the living wood, cradled in the heart of the tree like a secret kept by the patient earth itself. So great and so fair did that tree become, broad of trunk and sweet of scent, that word of it reached the king of that distant country, and he sent for it to be cut down, for he wished to use its fine, strong trunk as a great pillar to hold up the roof of his own hall. And so the tree was felled and trimmed and raised up as a column in the king's house, and no one in that country knew, no one could have known, that hidden within that smooth, strong pillar lay the good King Osiris, carried so far from his own green land, held now in the silent heart of the wood. The old tellers love this gentle strangeness, that he should be lost not in a tomb or a cave, but in a living tree, in the warm heart of something still growing. And it was to that far country, and to that very hall, that the long search of Isis at last led her. For wisdom and love together had guided her steps, and she came to the city by the sea, and she heard, somehow, the soft thread of the truth, that within the king's great pillar lay the thing she had crossed the whole world to find. But she did not come storming into the king's house demanding it, for that was not her way. Instead, the old tellers say, she came quietly, humbly, as a stranger resting by a well at the edge of the town, in the cool shade near the water where the women of the city came to draw what they needed and to gather in the evening. There she sat, gentle and unknown, and there she was kind to the women who came to the well, and she had a graciousness about her that drew people near, the way a warm fire on a cool evening draws people to sit beside it. She spoke softly with them, and braided their hair with skillful, loving hands, and breathed upon them a sweet fragrance that lingered, so that they went home carrying with them a calm and a sweetness they could not explain. And word of this gentle stranger spread through the town, and reached at last the ears of the queen of that country, who sent for her and welcomed her into the royal house, never guessing who she truly was. So Isis came at last inside the very hall where the pillar stood, the pillar that held her beloved within it, and she was given a place there and a quiet task, caring for the queen's small child, the youngest prince of that distant land. And here the old tellers tell of a strange and tender wonder, which we will touch only softly, for it belongs to the deep old magic of the tale. Isis, in her great love and her great power, began to give the little prince a kind of secret blessing in the night, a gift meant to make him deathless, to lift him beyond the reach of all ending, the way a loving heart wishes it could keep forever the small ones it cares for. By night, she worked her gentle magic over the sleeping child, and by day she cared for him with a mother's tenderness, all while she watched and waited near the pillar that held her lord. But the blessing she meant for the child was a secret one, and secret blessings, the old tellers say, are easily broken by those who do not understand them. One night, the child's mother, the queen, came upon the strange work that Isis was quietly doing, and not understanding it, fearing for her son, she cried out in alarm. And so the deep magic was interrupted before it was complete, and the gentle gift of deathlessness slipped away, undone, as such gifts so often do. And in that moment, the old tellers say, Isis let her true self be seen at last, no longer a humble stranger at the well, but the great and shining goddess that she was, radiant and sorrowful and kind. And the king and queen of that far country, seeing now who their gentle guest had truly been, were filled with awe and with a deep and reverent kindness. They asked her what they could do, how they could honor her, how they could make amends. And Isis asked them for one thing only, the one thing she had crossed the whole wide world to find. She asked for the pillar. She asked for the great smooth column that held up their hall, for she knew what lay hidden within it. And they gave it to her gladly, and the pillar was lowered, and the fine wood was opened with great care, and there at last, after all the long searching, after all the miles and all the seasons, Isis found her beloved Osiris, held safe and whole within the heart of the tree. The old tellers say that when she found him at last, she folded herself down over the chest and wept, a long, deep weeping that had been waiting in her all through the long search, and her grief was so great and so tender that the very land seemed to grow quiet around her in sympathy. But there was joy hidden inside that grief too, the deep, quiet joy of a search finally ended, of a lost thing found, of a love that had refused to give up and had been answered at last. She had found him. After everything, she had found him. Let that gentle truth settle over you now, like a warm blanket drawn slowly up to the chin. The long wandering was over. The beloved was found. And Isis lifted the chest with infinite care and turned at last toward home, to carry her lord back to the green land of the river. So Isis came home at last, back across the long miles she had walked in her sorrow, back to the green land of the river, carrying her beloved with the greatest of care. And she did not wish to leave him out in the open, where her restless brother might find him. And so she hid the chest away in a quiet and secret place among the deep marshes of the river delta, in the soft green wilderness where the tall reeds grow thick and the water lies still, and the birds call softly to one another at evening. There, in that hidden place, far from the eyes of the world, she set down her lord and kept watch over him. And for a little while, the old tellers say, there was a fragile and tender peace, the way there is a kind of peace in the eye of a long sorrow. But the marshes are wide, and the nights are long, and even a faithful heart must sometimes rest. And so it happened, on a certain night when the moon was bright over the still water, and Isis had gone apart for a while, that Set came hunting in those very marshes. He had not given up his restless watching, the old tellers say, and the desert wind of his heart had carried him out into the night, and there, by the bright cold light of the moon, among the reeds, he came upon the hidden chest, and he knew it at once for what it was. We will not look hard at what came next, for it is the darkest turn of the whole old tale, and it is told here only softly, only enough, the way you might mention a storm that passed long ago over a sea. You will never have to sail. Let your breath stay slow. There is nothing here that can reach you. What the old tellers say is that Set, in his bitterness, would not let his brother rest, even in hiding, and that he scattered what he found, dividing it, and carrying the pieces far and wide, casting them away into many places across the whole length of the land, into the river and the marshes and the distant fields, so that what had been one might never easily be made one again. He thought in his restless cruelty that this would be the end, that a thing so scattered could never be gathered, that his gentle brother was now beyond all finding and all return. And then he went away into his dry places, believing the long story was over. But he had not reckoned with the love of Isis, which was a deeper and more patient thing than any scattering. When she returned and found what had been done, the old tellers say, her grief broke over her like a great slow wave. And yet even in that grief she did not despair, for despair was a country her loving heart would not enter. Instead, she rose once more as she had risen at the very beginning, and she set out once again to search. Only now her search was longer and harder than before, for now she was not seeking one hidden thing but many scattered ones spread across the whole wide land. And so began the second great search of Isis, gentler even than the first in the telling, for there is a deep tenderness in it that has comforted the hearts of those who heard it for thousands of years. She did not go alone this time. Her quiet sister came to walk beside her, and together the two of them went out across the land, into every place where a piece of the lost king might have come to rest. They searched the reed beds and the river banks. They searched the still backwaters and the wide green fields. They searched the lonely places and the crowded places, asking always, looking always, with a patience that did not tire and a love that did not cool. And wherever they found a piece of him, the old tellers say, Isis would pause, and she would not simply gather it up and hurry on. Instead, in each place where she found a part of her beloved, she would set down a marker of her grief and her love, a small shrine, a quiet holy place, so that ever after the people of that place would remember that here, in this very spot, something precious had been found and honored. And so, as she searched, she did not only gather, she also blessed, scattering shrines across the land the way the seasons scatter flowers, until the whole long country was dotted with quiet places of love, each one marking a piece of the journey, each one a small, soft answer to the cruelty that had scattered him. There is something in this, the old tellers felt, that is gentler and truer than any revenge. For Set had scattered Osiris in hatred, hoping to make him nothing. And Isis answered not with hatred, but with such love that the scattering itself became holy, became a blessing laid over the whole land. Every place that had received a piece of the lost king became a place of peace and remembrance. The cruelty was real, but the love was greater, and the love turned even the cruelty into something that could be honored. Let that settle softly over you now, the way a warm hand settles softly on a tired brow. There is a kind of love that cannot be defeated even by being scattered, a love that simply gathers and gathers and gathers again, until it has made the broken thing whole. Piece by piece, over many quiet seasons, Isis gathered her beloved together again. She and her sister went the length and breadth of the land, and from the river and the marshes and the far fields they brought back the scattered parts of Osiris, until at last all but one small portion had been found, and even that was honored in its own gentle way. And then, with the greatest care and the deepest tenderness, with the help of the wise ones who loved her, Isis began the slow and loving work of joining him together again, of making the scattered one whole, of binding the pieces of her beloved back into a single body, wrapped softly and lovingly in fine linen, so that he might be himself once more, complete and at rest. This is the gentle origin, the old tellers say, of the loving care with which that ancient people forever after tended their own beloved dead, wrapping them softly in linen, binding them with tenderness, laying them down with prayers and with sweet fragrances, so that they too might be made whole and might journey on. For Isis had shown the way. She had taken what was scattered and broken, and had made it whole again with nothing but patience and love and the deep, slow magic of devotion. And when her work was done, Osiris lay before her, gathered, complete, wrapped in linen, no longer scattered across the land, but one again, whole again, ready for what would come next. He was not yet living as he had lived before, but he was no longer lost. And that, after so long a sorrow, was a kind of dawn. Now here the old tellers tell of the deepest wonder of the whole story, and they tell it softly, the way one speaks of a thing too tender to say loudly. For the love of Isis was so great, and her wisdom so deep, that when she had gathered her beloved, and made him whole, and wrapped him in linen, she did not simply let him lie there in stillness forever. She spread her wings over him, the old tellers say, for she had about her the form of a bright and shining bird, and she beat the air gently above him, fanning the breath of life back into him, singing over him the oldest and softest of all the songs of love and grief and longing. All through the long night she kept her vigil, sheltering him beneath her wings, breathing her own life and love down into the stillness, calling him back, gently, gently, from the far country where he had gone. And by the deep magic of that love, the old tellers say, a spark of life returned to Osiris, not the whole of his old living as before, but enough for one last tenderness, enough that the love between him and Isis might bear fruit even out of all that sorrow. And so it was, in that hidden place among the reeds, beneath the sheltering wings, in the quiet between death and what lay beyond it, that a child was conceived, a son, who would carry forward everything his father had been, and who would one day set right all that had gone wrong. From the deepest grief, the old tellers marveled, came the seed of the greatest hope. From the gathered and wounded body of the gentle king came the promise of a new beginning. Let that gentle wonder rest over you now, soft as the brush of a wing. For Osiris, his last tenderness given, his line carried forward into the living world, would not remain among the living. His time in the green land of the river was ended, but he did not simply vanish, and he did not simply sleep. Instead, the old tellers say, he passed onward into another country, a quiet country beyond the edge of the world, beyond the edge of waking, beyond the edge of sleep. And there, in that hidden land, he would not be a wanderer or a lost one, but a king once more, greater and stiller than before. But we will come to that gentle kingdom in its time. For now, let us stay a while with Isis, and with the secret she now carried, the small, warm secret of the child to come. For Isis knew that she could not let her son be born into the open, where Set still ruled and still watched with his restless eyes. She knew that the child she carried was the rightful heir of his father, the one who would one day stand for all the goodness Osiris had brought into the world. And she knew that Set, if he learned of the child, would not let such a one grow up in peace. And so Isis did what loving mothers have always done in dangerous times. She hid. She went deep into the wild green marshes of the delta, into the thickest and most secret places, where the reeds grow taller than a person, and the water winds in 1,000 hidden channels, and no stranger can find his way. And there, alone and hidden and watchful, she waited for her child to be born. Picture that secret place now, if you like, as you drift. The tall green reeds whispering softly in the night wind, the still dark water reflecting the stars, the soft calls of the marsh birds settling to roost, the warm hush of a hidden world folded away from all danger, a green and watery cradle at the edge of everything. There, in that gentle secret place, the son of Osiris and Isis was born, and his name was Horus, and he was the hope of the whole long story, the child in whom his lost father lived on. And his mother bent over him in the reeds and loved him with all the fierce, soft love that had carried her across the whole world and back, and she vowed that she would keep him safe, whatever it cost her, until he was grown. It was not an easy hiding, the old tellers say, for the marshes hold their own dangers, and a child is a small and tender thing, and Isis could not always be at his side, for she had to go out, sometimes, to find food, to gather what they needed, to keep them both alive. And so she would leave him hidden in the reeds, hidden even from the friendly powers of the world, and go softly out, and her heart would be with him every moment she was away. There were nights of worry and nights of fear, the old tellers admit, for the wild marsh held creeping things and crawling things and all the small dangers of a wild green world. But again and again, when danger came near the hidden child, the gentle powers of the world watched over him, and his mother's deep magic shielded him, and the kindly ones who loved Osiris sent their help in his son's hour of need. For though Set ruled the open land, there were still many in the world who remembered the gentle king and loved his memory, and who looked with hope toward the hidden child who was his heir. The wise and shining ones of the world had not forgotten Osiris, and they kept a quiet watch over the marsh, and more than once, the old tellers say, when the little Horus was in some danger and his mother cried out for help, that help came swiftly and softly, and the child was healed, and the danger passed, and the night grew quiet again. So Horus grew, hidden in the green wild, watched over by his mother and by the kindly powers, a secret hope ripening slowly in a secret place, the way a seed ripens unseen in the dark, warm earth before it ever breaks the surface toward the light. And as he grew, his mother told him, softly, in the long marsh evenings, the story of who he was. She told him of his father, the gentle king, who had given the world grain and law and song and rest. She told him of the love between them, and of the long searching, and of how he himself had come to be, a child of love drawn even out of the deepest sorrow. And she told him gently of the wrong that had been done, and of the restless brother who had done it, and she let him understand, slowly, as a child comes slowly to understand the shape of the world, that one day he would have to stand up in the open and claim what was rightfully his and set the long sorrow right. But she did not frighten him with it. She let it grow in him slowly, the way she let everything grow slowly, with patience and with love, until he was ready. And so the years passed in the green hidden marshes, slow and quiet, and the child Horus grew into a young man, strong and steady, with his mother's wisdom and his father's gentleness woven together in him. And when at last he was grown and ready, the time came for him to step out of the hidden world and into the open, to stand before the great powers of the world and claim what was his by right, the throne of his father, the kingship over the long green land. For all those years the restless brother Set had held that throne, having taken it when the gentle king was lost, and now the rightful heir had come of age, and the long question of who should rightly rule could no longer be put off. And so begins the part of the old story that the tellers called the contending, the long and patient dispute between Horus and Set over the throne of the land. Now I must tell you gently, so that you may rest easy, that this contending is not a tale of terrible battles, not really, though there are trials in it and there are struggles. It is, more than anything, a long and almost dreamlike disagreement, carried out before a great council of the wise and shining powers of the world, who gathered to hear both sides and to decide who should rightly wear the crown. Picture, if you like, a vast and calm assembly hall beyond the edge of the world, where the great powers sat in a wide circle, ancient and patient, and where Horus came to make his claim, and Set came to make his, and the long matter was weighed and argued and turned over, slowly, across what the old tellers say was a very long time indeed, for the powers of the world are in no hurry, and they let the matter unfold at its own unhurried pace. Horus stood before the great assembly, young and earnest, and he made his claim simply. He was the son of Osiris, he said, the gentle king whom all the world had loved, and the throne of his father belonged by right to him, the rightful heir, as a thing handed down from father to son, the way a lamp is handed from one hand to the next, so that the light is never lost. It was a just claim and a clear one, and many in the assembly looked kindly upon the young one and felt the rightness of it in their hearts. For they too remembered Osiris, and they too had grieved his loss, and to see his son standing before them, grown and worthy, stirred in them a deep and tender hope. But Set too made his case, and he was not without his arguments, for he was old and strong, and had held the throne for a long while, and he spoke of his own strength, and of the dangers the world faced, and of how a strong hand was needed to keep the great enemies of order at bay. And there was a kind of truth in this too, the old tellers admit, for Set, restless and harsh as he was, did have a real strength, and there were certain dark dangers in the old world that perhaps only such a strength could face. And so the great assembly was divided, and could not easily decide, and the matter dragged on, season after season, argument after argument, neither side prevailing, while the throne of the land waited empty for its rightful king. Through all this long contending, the old tellers say, the mother Isis stood by her son, as she had always stood by those she loved, working quietly and wisely on his behalf, for she was the cleverest of all the powers of the world, and she knew how to turn a matter gently in the direction it ought to go. And there were trials set, contests between Horus and Set, tests of strength and of cunning and of endurance, by which the assembly hoped to settle the question. We will not follow every one of these closely, for they are many, and this is a story for drifting, not for keeping careful count. But each one, in its turn, the young Horus met, sometimes by strength, and sometimes by his mother's clever help, and sometimes by his own quiet patience, holding fast through every trial, never giving up his rightful claim. There were contests upon the water, the old tellers say, where the two of them raced in vessels, and Set sought to win by trickery, and was undone in turn by a gentle trickery of Isis and Horus, so that his schemes came to nothing. There were contests of endurance, of who could outlast the other in some long and difficult test, and again the patient Horus held on, steady as his father had been steady, while the restless Set wearied of the long waiting, for it was ever the nature of Set to want things quickly, and the nature of Horus, his father's son, to wait. And slowly, through all these trials, the great assembly began to lean more and more toward the rightful heir, for they saw in him not only the right of his birth, but the worthiness of his nature, the steadiness, the patience, the deep and gentle strength that comes not from harshness, but from love. Let your breath stay slow as the long contending unfolds, for there is no need to feel its struggle as a struggle. Feel it instead as a slow tide turning, as a long night gradually giving way to the first soft gray of dawn. The matter that had seemed so tangled and so endless was, all the while, working itself slowly toward its rightful end, the way a river that seems to wander aimlessly through the flat green land is, all the while, finding its sure way to the sea. Nothing was hurried, nothing was forced. But the rightful king was, slowly, being recognized, and the long wrong was, slowly, being set right. And in the midst of all this, the old tellers tell of a gentle and important moment, when the great assembly, unable fully to decide, sought the wisdom of the eldest and stillest of all the powers, and word was sent even to the quiet country where Osiris himself now dwelt, the hidden kingdom beyond the edge of the world. For Osiris, though he had passed from the land of the living, was not gone, and his voice still carried weight among the powers of the world, perhaps more weight now than ever before. And from that quiet country the gentle king sent his answer, speaking on behalf of his son, reminding the great assembly of all the good he himself had done, the grain he had given, the law and the song and the rest, and asking gently that the throne of that good work be given now to his rightful heir, so that the long line of goodness might continue unbroken. And the weight of that quiet voice from beyond the edge of the world settled the matter at last. And so, at the long last of that long contending, the great assembly of the powers of the world gave their judgment, and it was just, and it was gentle, and it was right. The throne of the green land, the kingship over the living world, was given to Horus, the son of Osiris, the rightful heir, and he was lifted up and crowned, and the long wrong that had begun on that warm feast night so many years before was at last set right. The good king's line was restored. The light that had passed from father to son was not lost after all. And a great quiet gladness settled over the world, the old tellers say, like the deep calm that settles over the land after a long-awaited rain. And as for Set, the restless brother, his place in the world was given its own quiet ordering, the old tellers say, for the powers of the world did not destroy him utterly, since even the desert and the dry wind have their place in the great order of things. He was set apart in his own harsh country to do his own harsh work, far from the green and gentle land, and there his restlessness could spend itself in the wild places where it did no harm to the fields and the people. So even the one who had brought the long sorrow was not cast wholly out, but woven in his own way into the great calm pattern of the world, where everything, even the dry wind off the desert, has its proper place and its proper season. And the green land was at peace, with its rightful king upon its throne. So Horus reigned in the land of the living, the worthy son of a worthy father, and under his care the old goodness of Osiris was renewed, the grain and the law and the song and the rest. And the people who had loved the Father now loved the Son, and the long story of sorrow had become, at the last, a story of restoration and of homecoming. The hidden child of the marshes had become the king of the bright land. The scattered and gathered Father lived on in the Son who sat upon his throne. And the love of Isis, which had carried the whole long story upon its patient shoulders, had been answered, fully and at last, in the crowning of her child. Let your breath go slow and deep now, for we have come through the long heart of the story, through the sorrow and the searching and the gathering and the long contending, and we have come out the other side into a quiet and a peace. There is not much left to tell now, and what is left is the gentlest part of all. For we have not yet followed Osiris himself into the quiet country where he went, the hidden kingdom beyond the edge of the world, and it is there, in that still and peaceful land, that our story will come at last to its rest. So let us turn now, softly, away from the bright land of the living, and toward that other gentler country, the kingdom of Osiris in the great beyond. When Osiris passed from the land of the living, the old tellers say, he did not end and he did not simply sleep. He went onward into a hidden country that lies beyond the edge of the waking world, a quiet land that the old people of the river called the Duat, the great below, the country through which the sun itself was thought to travel each night after it sank beneath the western horizon. Picture it not as a place of fear, for the old people did not think of it only with fear, but as a deep and shaded country, a vast still land of quiet rivers and quiet fields, where the light is soft and low, like the light of a long evening that never quite becomes night, and where those who have lived and loved and died may journey on toward a deeper rest. And in that quiet country, Osiris, the gentle king, became a king once more, the lord and the gentle ruler of that whole hidden land. For it was fitting, the old tellers felt, that the one who had been lost and gathered and made whole again should become the lord of all those who must pass through lost themselves, the kind and patient sovereign of the country of the dead, the one who understood better than any other the long journey from sorrow toward peace. He sat upon his quiet throne in the great below, crowned and still, wrapped in the soft linen of his gathering, and he watched over all who came into his country, and he received them with the same gentleness he had once shown to the living, and he offered them rest. For this was the great and comforting thought at the heart of the old story, the thought that made the people of the river love Osiris so deeply across so many thousands of years. They believed that because Osiris had died and had been made whole and had risen to rule the quiet country, every one of them, in their own turn, when their own time came at last, might follow the same gentle path that he had walked. As he had been gathered, so they too might be gathered. As he had passed through death into a deeper life, so they too might pass through their own ending into their own rest. He had gone before them into the dark country, and he had made it not a place of terror, but a place of welcome, a kingdom ruled by the kindest of all kings. And so they did not need to be afraid. And the old tellers told of the journey that each soul must make through that quiet country, and they told it gently, as a long and dreamlike passage, a slow travel through a soft and shaded land, toward the great hall where Osiris waited. Picture that journey now, as you yourself drift, for it is a soothing thing to imagine. A soul, having left the bright land of the living, sets out upon a long, slow road through the great below, through the quiet halls and the still waters and the soft, low light, carried gently onward the way the night carries the sleeping sun toward its morning. There is no hurry in that country. There is only the slow, sure passage toward rest, and the gentle company of the kindly powers who guide each traveler along the way. And along that road, the old tellers say, the traveler passes through many quiet gates and many soft halls, and at each one there is a gentle keeper and a soft word to be spoken, a kind of password of the heart, by which the traveler is known and welcomed and allowed to pass onward. These were not cruel trials meant to frighten, but more like the gentle stages of a long falling asleep, each gate a little deeper into rest than the one before, each hall a little quieter, a little softer, a little nearer to the great peace at the journey's end. And the kindly powers of that country walked beside the traveler, and named the gates, and spoke the soft words, and held the traveler's hand. The old teller said, the way a loving one holds the hand of a child being led gently to bed. Let your own breath grow slower still as you imagine that long, quiet road, for there is nothing in it to fear, only deeper and deeper rest. Gate after soft gate, hall after quiet hall, the light growing gentler, the silence growing kinder, the great peace drawing nearer with every slow step. And at the end of that long and dreamlike passage, the old tellers say, the traveler came at last to the great hall of Osiris, the still and shining hall where the gentle king sat upon his throne in the heart of the quiet country, waiting to welcome each one home. And there, in that hall, the old people imagined the last and gentlest moment of the whole long journey, the moment they called the weighing of the heart. The weighing of the heart, the old tellers say, was the gentlest and the most solemn of all the moments of the long journey, and yet there is nothing in it to disturb your rest, for it is, at its heart, a moment of truth and of mercy. In the great hall of Osiris, the old people imagined, there stood a great and perfectly balanced scale, the kind of simple scale a merchant might use to weigh out grain, with two pans hanging level from a single beam. And when a traveler came at last into that hall, having passed all the soft gates and quiet halls of the long road, their heart was laid gently upon one pan of that scale, and upon the other pan was laid a single feather, the soft white feather of truth, the feather of the gentle order that holds the whole world together. And the meaning of this was tender and deep, for the old people believed that a heart grows heavy with the wrongs it carries, with cruelty and with falsehood, and with all the hard things a life may gather, and that a heart kept gentle and honest and kind stays light, light as a feather, light enough to rise. And so the weighing was not a punishment, but a kind of gentle truth-telling, a moment in which a life was simply seen for what it had been, weighed softly against the feather of truth, to see whether the heart had stayed light enough to pass onward into the great peace. And beside the scale stood the kindly keepers of that hall, watching with grave gentleness, and there sat Osiris upon his quiet throne, presiding over it all with his deep and patient kindness. Picture that gentle scene now, as softly as you can, for we are near the stillest part of the story. The quiet hall, the soft low light, the great balanced scale, the white feather resting on one pan, light and pure, and the kindly powers waiting not to condemn, but to welcome. The old people imagined that for a heart that had lived gently, a heart that had been kind and honest, and had not grown heavy with cruelty, the scale would balance, the heart and the feather hanging level and even, and the traveler would be declared true and welcomed onward into the green and peaceful fields beyond, the fields of the blessed, where the grain grows tall, and the water is sweet, and the rest is deep and unending. And so the long journey of each soul came at last to its gentle end, not in fear, but in welcome, received into the quiet kingdom of Osiris, into the deep peace of the great below, into a rest that was like the deepest and sweetest of all sleeps. For the old people did not imagine the country of Osiris as a place of shadows and sorrow, but as a place of soft green fields and gentle waters, a place where all the weariness of living was finally laid down, where those who had loved one another in life might be together again, where there was bread and there was sweetness, and there was, above all, rest, the deep, good rest that the gentle king had first taught the living world to find, now offered forever to all who came home to him. And this, the old tellers felt, was the deepest gift of the whole long story, the gift that Osiris gave not only to his own people long ago, but, in a way, to everyone who has ever lain down at the end of a long day and longed to be received gently into rest. For his story tells us that loss is not the end, that what is scattered can be gathered, that what is broken can be made whole, that love is more patient than sorrow and more lasting, and that even out of the deepest grief, new life and new hope may quietly be born. And it tells us that beyond the edge of the waking world there waits not terror, but welcome, a kindly king upon a quiet throne, a soft green country, and a rest as deep and as gentle as the sea. So Osiris reigned still, the old tellers say, in the quiet country of the great below, the lord of all those who have made the long journey, the gentle keeper of the deepest rest. And Isis is with him, the faithful one, whose love carried the whole story from its sorrow to its peace, and who is honored forever as the truest of all hearts, the one who would not give up, the one who gathered her beloved out of the very scattering of the world and made him whole again with nothing but devotion. And Horus reigns in the bright land of the living, the worthy heir, carrying his father's goodness forward into every new morning, so that the grain still grows, and a river still rises and falls in its patient way, and the long line of light is never broken. And that, gentle listener, is the whole of the story of Osiris, told slowly, from the very first stirring of the world, out of the dark still waters, through the gentle reign of the good king, through the long sorrow and the long searching, through the gathering and the rising and the hidden child, and the long contending, all the way to the quiet kingdom beyond the edge of sleep, where the gentle king waits to welcome every weary traveler home. It is an old, old story, older than almost any other, and the people of the long green river told it and loved it for thousands and thousands of years. And they took from it the same deep comfort that perhaps you may take from it now, the comfort of knowing that beyond all loss there waits a gathering, and beyond all sorrow there waits a rest. And now, since the night is long and there is no need to hurry toward its end, let us linger a little while longer in the gentle places of the story, and walk through them again slowly, the way you might walk again through the rooms of a beloved old house, touching each familiar thing softly as you pass. There is no need to keep awake for this. Let it be a kind of dream you are half inside already, a slow returning to the images that have soothed you, told now even more softly than before, so that you may sink the rest of the way down into sleep upon them, as upon a deep, soft bed of gathered feathers. Return with me first to the very beginning, to the deep, still waters before the world. Remember the dark. Remember the warm, endless calm of those first waters, holding everything that would ever be, the way the quiet just before sleep holds all of tomorrow, folded gently away where it cannot trouble you. Remember the slow rising of the first small hill out of the deep, the first dry place, the first solid thing, lifting quietly above the water, like the first thought that gathers softly out of a drowsing mind. There was no hurry in that beginning, and there is no hurry now. Let the slow, patient calm of those first waters move through you, breath by breath, as the world itself first stirred toward being. Remember the soft breath that became the wind, the first gentle motion over the still water, the faint breeze that set the surface trembling, and then let it go still again. Remember the broad, warm earth lying low and restful, and the great starry sky arching tenderly over it, bending close from horizon to horizon, the way a loving one bends close over a sleeping child to draw the blanket up. Remember how room was made between them, the wide, gentle space where days and seasons and stories could begin. The same kind of soft, open space that opens now, inside you, as the cares of the day drift away, and there is room, at last, simply to rest. And remember the gentle king, born into that young and tender world, carrying in him the deep patience of the first waters. Remember the green land he made, the golden fields swaying softly in the river wind, the orchards heavy with sweet fruit, the people fed and unafraid, the cooking fires sending up their thin blue smoke in the cool of the evening. Remember the long golden afternoons over the waving grain, and the cool blue evenings beside the slow water, and the deep, simple contentment that settled over that whole world like dew settling over a field at the close of day. Let that same contentment settle over you now. You are fed. You are safe. There is nothing you need to do. The day's work is done, and the evening has come, and it is time simply to rest, and linger a moment longer with the gentle king in his green and golden land, before the sorrow ever came, for there is deep rest to be found simply in dwelling there. Imagine the great river itself, the long, patient water that was the heart of that whole world, moving slowly through the land from the far south to the distant sea, broad and calm and unhurried, carrying the soft light of the sky upon its surface. The people of that land lived their whole lives along its banks, and they came to love its slow, sure rhythm the way you love the rhythm of your own breathing, without ever having to think of it. And the greatest gift of that river, the gift the gentle king had taught them to receive, was the soft yearly flood, the slow rising of the waters that came each year as faithfully as the seasons turn. Imagine it slowly as you drift. Through the long, warm months, the river would rise very gently, day by day, spreading out across the low, flat fields on either side, not in a rush, not in any violence, but in a slow and patient spreading, like a blanket being drawn softly across a bed. And the people did not fear this rising, for the gentle king had taught them its meaning, and so they watched it come with quiet gladness, knowing what it carried. For when at last the waters drew back again, slowly, in their own good time, they left behind them, across all the fields, a soft new layer of dark, rich soil, damp and fertile and ready, the most patient gift the river had to give, the gift that made the grain grow tall and the people glad. And so the whole life of that land moved in a slow and gentle circle, the same calm circle, year after year after year. And there is something deeply restful in simply following that circle in your mind as you sink towards sleep. First, the soft rising of the flood, the slow spreading of the waters across the fields, the world half turned to a calm and shining lake under the wide sky. Then the slow drawing back, the waters easing away, leaving the dark, soft soil behind. Then the pressing of the seed into that waiting earth, and the long quiet growing, the green shoots rising slowly day by day. Then the ripening, the fields turning slowly from green to gold under the patient sun. Then the gathering of the harvest, the tall grain cut and bound and carried in. And then the rest, the quiet time, before the river began once more to rise. Around and around and around, slow and sure and gentle, the same calm circle, holding the whole world in its quiet turning. Let your own breathing follow that slow circle now, the rising, the spreading, the drawing back, the growing, the ripening, the gathering, the rest, in and out, in and out. There is no hurry anywhere in it. There never was. The river took all the time it needed and gave its gift in its own good season, and the people learned from the gentle king simply to trust it, simply to wait, simply to rest in the sure knowledge that the waters would rise again, and the grain would grow again, and there would be bread again, as there always had been, as there always would be. Let yourself rest in that same sure trust now. The night will turn, as it always does, toward morning. There is nothing you need to watch for. There is nothing you need to keep. You may simply rest and let the slow circle turn. And in the cool of those long evenings, when the day's gentle work was done, the people of that land would gather by the slow water, the old tellers say, and they would rest. The cooking fires would send up their thin blue smoke into the deepening sky. The children would grow sleepy in their mother's arms. The soft music the gentle king had taught them, the low, sweet sound of strings and reeds, would drift out over the fields and the water, and the stars would come out one by one in the great arching sky, the same stars that had watched over the very beginning of the world. And one by one the people would lie down, unafraid, fed and safe and content, and sleep would come to them gently, as it is coming to you now, softly, slowly, like the soft yearly flood spreading out across the quiet fields. This was the rest the gentle king had given them, and it is the rest he gives you still across all the long thousands of years through this old and gentle story on this quiet night. And remember the long faithful searching of Isis, the cloaked figure moving softly through the world, never hurrying and never stopping, asking always, listening always, following the small bright thread of her love across the whole wide land. Remember how she walked the long banks of the river and followed its slow water toward the sea, and spoke gently with the people of the fields and the marshes, the fishermen and the children, and the old women in their doorways. There is something so soothing in that patient search, the way it asks only that you follow, gently, one slow step after another, down the long, quiet roads of an old, old world. Let your own breathing be those slow steps now, in and out, each one carrying you a little farther down the quiet road toward sleep. Remember the far green shore where the chest came to rest among the reeds, and the small tree that grew up slowly around it, season after patient season, until it held the lost king safe within its living heart. Remember how Isis came at last to that distant city, and sat quietly by the well in the cool shade near the water, gentle and unknown, braiding the hair of the women who came to draw what they needed, breathing a sweetness over them that lingered. Remember how she was welcomed into the great house, and how she found at last, within the smooth, strong pillar, the thing she had crossed the whole world to find, and how she folded herself down and wept the long weeping that had waited in her through all the miles, a weeping with a deep, quiet joy hidden inside it, the joy of a lost thing found. And remember the gathering, gentlest of all the gentle parts of the tale. Remember how, when her beloved was scattered, she did not despair, but rose and searched again, and how, in every place where she found a piece of him, she set down a small shrine of love, so that the whole long land became dotted with quiet, holy places, until the scattering itself had been turned, by her devotion, into a blessing laid softly over the whole world. Remember the deep, slow magic of her gathering, the binding of the broken into the whole, the wrapping in soft linen, the patient making of one out of many. There is no force in the world so gentle and so strong as that, the love that simply gathers and gathers and gathers again until the broken thing is whole. Remember the bright wings spread over the stillness, beating the soft air, breathing life back into the gathered one, all through the long night of vigil. Remember the secret child born in the green hidden marshes, in the watery cradle folded away from all danger, where the tall reeds whispered, and the still water held the stars, and the marsh birds called softly to one another at evening. Remember how the child grew there, hidden and safe, watched over by his mother and by all the kindly powers of the world, a small bright hope ripening slowly in a secret place, the way a seed ripens unseen in the warm, dark earth before it ever breaks toward the light. And remember how he grew strong and steady and gentle, his mother's wisdom and his father's kindness woven together in him, until he was ready to step out into the open and set the long wrong right. And remember the long contending, which was not, in the end, a tale of terrible battles, but a slow turning of the tide, a long night gradually giving way to the first soft gray of dawn. Remember the great calm assembly of the wise and shining powers, gathered in their wide, patient circle beyond the edge of the world, weighing the matter slowly, in no hurry at all. Remember how the young Horus stood before them and made his simple, rightful claim, and how, trial by trial, and season by season, the great assembly leaned more and more toward him, not only for the right of his birth, but for the worthiness of his nature, his steadiness, his patience, the deep, gentle strength that comes not from harshness, but from love. Remember how the quiet voice of Osiris himself, from the hidden country beyond the world, settled the matter at last, and how the rightful king was crowned, and the long wrong was set right, and a great quiet gladness settled over the world, like the calm after a long-awaited rain. And remember, finally, the quiet country itself, the great below, the hidden kingdom beyond the edge of the waking world, where the gentle king became a king once more. Remember that it was not a place of fear, but a deep and shaded land of quiet rivers and quiet fields, where the light is soft and low like the light of a long evening that never quite becomes night. Remember the long dream-like road through that country, the soft gates and the quiet halls, each one a little deeper into rest than the one before, each one a little softer, a little kinder, a little nearer to the great peace at the journey's end. Remember the kindly powers who walked beside each traveler, naming the gates, speaking the soft words, holding the traveler's hand the way a loving one holds the hand of a child being led gently to bed. And remember the gentle weighing, the heart laid softly against the white feather of truth, not as a punishment, but as a kind of tender truth-telling, a seeing of a life for what it had been. Remember how a heart that had stayed gentle and honest and kind stayed light, light enough to balance the feather, light enough to rise, and how such a one was welcomed onward into the green and peaceful fields beyond, the fields of the blessed, where the grain grows tall, and the water is sweet, and the rest is deep and unending. Remember that Osiris waited there upon his quiet throne to receive each weary traveler with the same gentleness he had once shown the living, and to offer them at the long last rest. This was the comfort the old people took from the story, and it is the comfort I would leave with you now, as the night deepens and your breathing slows. That loss is not the end, that what is scattered can be gathered, that what is broken can be made whole, that love is more patient than sorrow and outlasts it, that even out of the deepest grief, new hope may quietly be born, and that beyond the edge of the waking world there waits not terror, but welcome, a kindly king upon a quiet throne, a soft green country, and a rest as deep and as gentle as the sea. You may carry these gentle thoughts down with you now into your own sleep, the way a traveler carries a small warm lamp down into a quiet and welcoming country. And now, since there is still a soft stretch of night ahead, and since you may yet be drifting between waking and sleeping, let us rest a long quiet while in the gentlest country of the whole story, the quiet kingdom of the great below, and simply dwell there softly, with nothing to do but breathe and drift, as one image after another rises slowly and then fades, the way images rise and fade at the very edge of sleep. Imagine that you yourself are walking very slowly along the long quiet road through that shaded country. Though there is no weariness in the walking, only a deep and growing peace. The light around you is soft and low and golden, the light of a long evening that never quite becomes night, and it lies gently over everything, so that nothing is harsh, and nothing is bright, and nothing asks anything of your tired eyes. The path beneath you is smooth and easy. There is no hurry. There is nowhere you must be by any certain time. There is only the slow, sure passage forward into deeper and deeper quiet, and you may take it as slowly as you wish, one soft step, and then another, and then another, each one carrying you a little farther into rest. On either side of the quiet road, the fields of that gentle country stretch away into the soft golden distance, fields of tall grain swaying very slowly in a wind so gentle you can barely feel it, a wind that carries the faint sweet smell of growing things and warm earth and slow water. Here and there a quiet river winds through the fields, its surface smooth and still, reflecting the soft, low light, moving so slowly that it hardly seems to move at all, the way the breath moves in a body that is almost asleep. There are reeds along its banks, tall and green and whispering, and now and then a soft bird call drifts across the water, low and gentle, a sound that does not startle, but only deepens the quiet around it. Let your breathing move as slowly as that quiet river now, in and out, smooth and unhurried and deep. And as you walk that soft road, you come, now and then, to one of the gentle gates the old tellers spoke of, but there is nothing in them to fear, for at each one a kindly keeper waits with a calm and welcoming face. And as you draw near, the gate opens softly before you, and you pass through into a country even quieter than the one before. With each gate you pass, you feel a little lighter, a little freer, a little more deeply at rest, as though at each one you set down some small weight you had been carrying without even knowing it, some small worry, some small care, some small piece of the long day, until you are walking unburdened, lighter and lighter, through softer and softer light. The old people imagined many such gates and many such soft halls, each one a little deeper into peace, and you need not count them, for there is no counting in that country, only the slow, sure deepening of rest. Let yourself pass through them now, one after another, in your drifting mind. Through a gate into a hall of soft golden light, through another into a hall of cool blue evening, through another into a hall so quiet and so dim and so gentle that it is almost like the inside of sleep itself, with each one deeper, with each one softer, with each one nearer to the great peace that waits, patient and kind, at the end of the long, quiet road. And all the while, though you cannot see him yet, you know that at the far end of that road, the gentle king is waiting, the lord of the quiet country, seated upon his still throne in his great soft hall, ready to welcome you home. There is no fear in the thought of him, only a deep, warm comfort, the comfort a tired child feels at the thought of a loving parent waiting at the end of a long day. He understands, better than anyone, how long the journey has been, and how weary the traveler, for he himself was once lost and scattered and gathered and made whole. And he knows the whole long road from sorrow into peace, every soft step of it, and he waits at the end of it not to judge, but to welcome, not to frighten, but to give rest. So walk on, softly, in your drifting mind, down that long, gentle road, through the soft, golden fields and beside the slow, still rivers, through the kindly gates and the quiet halls, lighter and lighter, deeper and deeper, with nothing to fear and nowhere to hurry, and nothing to do but rest. And if, somewhere along that road, you should slip all the way down into sleep, then let the road carry you, for it leads only toward peace, and the gentle king will watch over your sleeping as he watches over all who come into his quiet country. There is nothing you need to hold on to now. You may let the story go, and let the images go, and let even the gentle road go, and simply rest in the deep, soft quiet that lies beneath them all, the quiet that was there in the first still waters before the world began, and that waits, patient and warm, at the end of every long day. For the night is deep now, and you have come a long way through this old story, and there is very little left to say, and what little there is will be said softly and slowly, and then more softly still, until the words themselves grow quiet and drift away into the silence, and leave you to your rest. So let your breathing slow even further now. Let it grow long and easy and deep. There is no effort in it. The breath simply rises and falls on its own, the way the great river rises and falls, the way the slow tide comes and goes, the way the soft light of that quiet country deepens gently toward the stillness at the heart of all things. Let your body grow heavy now and soft and warm. Let the last small tightness anywhere in you ease and let go. Feel how the place where you are resting holds you completely, so that you do not have to hold yourself at all. You may set down the whole weight of yourself now and be held, the way the gentle king is held in his soft linen, the way the small child was held in the green cradle of the marshes, the way the whole young world was held, once, in the warm, endless calm of the first still waters. You are held. You are safe. There is nothing you need to do. Think, if any thought still drifts through you, only of the gentlest things, of soft golden light over slow water, of tall grain swaying very slowly in a wind you can barely feel, of a quiet river moving so slowly it hardly seems to move at all, of a low, soft bird call drifting across the reeds at evening, and then the quiet closing gently in again, of a kindly king upon a still throne waiting only to give rest, of love that gathers what is scattered and makes whole what is broken and does not ever, ever give up. Let these soft images rise and fade and rise again, dimmer each time, slower each time, until they too grow still. The good king gave the world rest. That was his first gift and his last. He taught the living to lie down unafraid at the close of the day, knowing there would be bread in the morning, and he waits in the quiet country to give a deeper rest still to all who come to him at the end of their long roads. And the faithful one, whose love carried the whole story, watches over that rest with him, the truest of all hearts, the one who gathered and gathered and gathered again. And the rightful heir reigns in the bright land of the living, so that every morning still comes, and the river still rises, and the long line of light is never broken. All is set right. All is at peace. There is nothing left unfinished, nothing left to worry, nothing left to do. So rest now. Let the story be over, and let yourself be carried the rest of the way down. Your breathing is slow. Your body is heavy and warm. The light is soft and low. The quiet country is all around you, gentle and welcoming, and the gentle king is watching over your rest. You have nowhere to be and nothing to carry, and no one is waiting for anything from you. You may simply drift and sink and sleep. And if you are still here with me, still drifting at the soft edge of sleep, then let the last of the night go by very gently, with longer and longer silences between the words, like the long, slow spaces between the last few waves before the tide goes fully still. There is no more story to tell. There is only the quiet now, and your slow breathing, and the soft, warm dark, and the deep peace of the gentle country settling over you like a blanket drawn up by a loving hand. Breathe in, slow and soft, and let it out, slower still. Feel how each breath out carries a little more of you down towards sleep. There is nothing to hold. There is nothing to keep. The whole long story is finished, gathered, made whole, set safely down. You may rest in it now the way you would rest in a quiet house at the end of a long journey, with all the doors gently closed against the night, and the lamp turned low, and someone kind keeping watch. Let the soft golden light grow dimmer now in your drifting mind. Let the quiet river slow until it is perfectly still. Let the tall grain stand motionless in the windless evening. Let the last soft bird call fade and not come again, and leave only the deep, good silence behind it. Everything is quiet now. Everything is still. Everything is at rest. The gentle king is on his quiet throne. The faithful one is beside him. The bright land is at peace under its rightful king, and you are here, safe and warm and held, with nothing left to do but breathe and drift and sink and sleep. Let your breath grow slower still, softer, quieter. Let the spaces between your thoughts grow wide and warm and dark. Let go of the words, let go of the images. Let go of everything but the soft rising and falling of your own slow breath. You are safe, you are held, you are at peace. There is nothing you need to do, just breathe and rest and drift now all the way down into the deep and gentle quiet, into sleep. Rest now, sleep.